Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zalewski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CBRRealty.com. Recorded in Greater Downtown Miami. This one-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the Substack account of Peter Zalewski.
What's going on, Jenny?
Hey, how are you, Pete? I'm good.
Great, Jenny. We had a little bit of a technical problem. We were supposed to start a little bit earlier, but lo and behold, we are here regardless. And for you, if you're just tuning in, maybe all of a sudden we popped up on your computer, we popped up on your phone. I want you to know we're going to be doing these every Monday throughout the summer. It's a learning process. Silicon Valley says it's always nice and simple and it's easy. You press that button, everything is good to go. I will tell you, if you've never done this before, that is far from the truth. So, Jerry, what we're going to talk about this week is we're going to talk about pre-construction. I came out with our Sunday newsletter. We publish a newsletter every Sunday. Been doing it since 2007. If you can believe it, we had a little bit of a period where we were a little sporadic on it, but now we were back in the grind. And the newsletter that came out on Sunday, it talked about what was going on in the pre-construction condo game, especially in Greater Downtown Miami. I'm going to bring some stuff up to you. I'm going to ask you about it. Try to see what you're kind of seeing out there in the marketplace, and then we'll kind of kick it around. But before we get started, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what your specialty is, maybe some of your background, and then how people get a hold of you just in case they do want to reach out.
Yes, if you didn't hear us on the first episode, Jenny Huertas, owner broker of CBR Realty. I started in the business by being a mortgage broker more than 20 years ago, and then I became a real estate agent. And in 2011, I became a broker, and since then, I've been working on the Southeast Florida condo market mostly. Sometimes I do homes for my clients, but my specialty is condos. I work and live in Greater Downtown Miami, and I also work on the beach.
And for anybody who's tuning in for the first time, a little bit of background about myself. I came down here in 1993, came to Miami originally from Chicago, went to the University of Missouri. I was a journalist. I did that for 13 years, full-time staff writer. I was associate editor. Basically, I studied condos. I studied finance in terms of what I was writing about. I got to know a lot of these developers, many of which are still building today. Most of my perspective is going to be broad. It's going to be on a macro perspective, which is why I want to do these Miami Condo Mondays with Jenny, because she's on the ground. She's in the trenches. Rather than boots on the ground, she likes to say heels on the ground.
I need them.
Right, Jenny? You're the micro, I'm the macro.
Yeah, I definitely need the heels.
So,
Yes.
so Jen, why don't we start off with the overall state of the condo market before we get into pre-construction? What are you kind of seeing? Here we are in the end of May. We're in the summer buying season. The summer buying season traditionally goes from May through October when it's wet, although it hasn't been wet yet. And then from October through April is the winter buying season. So traditionally in winter, you deal with customers. In summer, you kind of collect the information, you figure stuff out, you put it all together. So basically you got two times. You got summer, hot, wet build, and you got winter, cool, all kinds of events. And you hold on and try to deal with all the customers that are coming into town. So why don't you give us some take on your historical perspective about the summer, how it's been, what you've seen, and whether or not you go away on vacation, because it's just not.
Yeah, well, in the last couple years, I seen, especially from last year to 2025, I seen a slowdown in the market, especially in the summer. This year is even worse because last year was because we were going to have elections, and this year is because we have elections. So that really influences the market. I'm not talking about just real estate. Everything is happening or not happening at the moment. So yes, I see a lot of difference between inventory, more inventory market, longer days stay in the property, staying longer in the market. People is being forced to lower the price. Obviously, they in the winter time they don't want to lower the price too much, but then when they see April or May not moving, they are forced to start lowering the price the most they can if they want to sell. Remember, there is a segment of the market of people that have 10 or 20 properties, they have too much money and they say, no, I don't need to sell. I want to keep it for 10 more years, but I'm not gonna negotiate the price down. Eventually they would, I'm sure, but that's what I'm seeing at this moment in
So, and Jen,
2025.
you were telling me about a customer you're working with right now is out there looking for a condo. I don't want you getting into too many details like names or not even the building, but if you could just talk generally speaking, let me kind of set the scene and you fill in some of the blanks. So
Okay.
you got a buyer looking for a home, potentially will move here permanently. This person's coming from United States, but out of town. And basically you're out kicking the tires, you're checking out some stuff. And as you're checking out some stuff, what you're finding is some of the sellers, while they should be recognizing what the state of the market is, they simply don't want to budge. They don't want to cut their price. They don't want to move whatsoever. Am I getting that right? And if I'm getting that right, why? Why don't they simply cut bait, take the cash, and run? Given the fact that we're in what we successfully predicted as the 2025 Florida Condo Association financial cliff, as per confirmed by the Wall Street Journal in April of this year. So, why don't the sellers cut bait and simply call it a day and move along? What did you hear directly from the sellers?
Well, it depends. If the property is the only one that has the view, that has the height, and they don't have much competition on the type of product. If that's the case, they're gonna hold on. And even when I have comparables that they were in a different floor, yes, a little bit different, not as premium view. And I do have the numbers to say, listen, I think we can do something if you go down in the price. He say no, because it's the only unit that it has these characteristics. In that sense, for of course, people that have middle of the road units, regular views, they don't have that luxury. They have to lower the prices.
And the sellers are confident that you've spoken to when you guys are submitting offers. They're confident that prices are going to hold. They're not concerned about all of the negative publicity, all of the talk, all the huge number of listings. I mean, right now, Jen, there's so many listings on the market. Some of the ballpark 28,500 in Tri-County, South Florida area, of which two-thirds are 30 years or more. So, people aren't afraid of psychology. They're not afraid of a do loop scenario where as people start to sell off, you put a couple low deals on the board in terms of closed transactions. And now all of a sudden everybody else gets dragged down just like the game of Tetris.
Well, it depends because depends on when they bought the property and what price they pay for it. That's very important. That's a factor that when we see a macro in the market, we know these units are for sale. But if you start looking one by one, and if the guy bought it, let's give you an example. If the property is listed for $600,000 and he bought it for 250, he's not gonna move much. He should. I would. And I even spoke, with the agent and say, well, he's making a lot of money. I say, yeah, but because of that, he has a good tenant and he doesn't want to move on the price. Again, it depends on the quality of the product. It depends on how much the person paid for it. And they do know. They do know that the market is slowing down. They do know they have to show it all the time and they don't get in a lot of offers because the market is staying at least like an average of 100 to 150 days in any given property in my area. And I'm talking about buildings that are not too old, from 2006 upwards. So they might need to face reality when it's 3 months. So since the sellers are not in the rush, the buyers are neither, especially when the buyer is is a cash buyer. They say, okay, let's wait for the market to come to me. So in that sense, it's not good for transactions. for closing the deals because we're gonna have all this pipeline of people that is waiting for the market come to them instead of they every day looking at something that is not gonna happen.
Now, Jenny, I got here in 1993. I think you preceded me by a year or two. So you've been through all of these cycles in South Florida. My experiences, and I don't want to get your thoughts, my experiences, the price you got today is probably higher than the price you're going to get tomorrow, and far higher than the price you're going to get next year if we are in fact unraveling. What say you? Is there any logic? Is there anything you can base on experience as to why somebody should hold on? Do they think it's going to turn? They think suddenly there's going to be a spur of activity? Do they think interest rates, which I did a piece this week last week, talking about could mortgage rates hit 8% as 10-year treasury goes up? Remember, it hit 4.6 last week. And you get 3 points to 10-year treasury in order to get the mortgage rate. So in theory, last week, a mortgage was 7.6. The Fed has said it's got to be south of 6% to spur housing activity. Traditionally, as interest rates go up, housing goes down. As interest rates go down, housing goes up. It looks like interest rates are going up. So what's the logic? Are these people simply focused on a psychological price? I got to get this number, therefore I'm not going to sell if I don't get it. Or are these people maybe just in it for the long term, regardless of what circumstances might be, as well as the state of their condo and any special assessments coming because of Surfside legislation? So Jenny, walk me through the logic, because to me, fundamentally, it looks like these people are flawed in their take.
Yeah, well, if I can tell you, the transactions that are happening are things at lower price because cash buyers are coming with cash and they can take advantage of these properties that are lower in the price. On the higher price range, also they're hoping that the cash comes instead of a financing. I talked to you last week about some owners getting creative and offering themselves to hold a mortgage for the new buyer because they have deep pockets. So this type of client is gonna work around or trying to figure out what is the way for them to get the most money that they can. But I'm sure they know because most of these people are experienced investors, and I'm sure they know they see it. It's just impossible to ignore that the market is changing, and we have a very long run up. So now it just when I look at the market, I say, okay, if I buy something, a property, and $1 million today, how much higher it really can go? So what is my play here? I'm gonna play to hold this property for posterity for my kids or for my family, or I'm gonna make money, or I'm just not gonna get in there. So it just so many possibilities that it depends on each particular seller or buyer. Therefore, your input in a macro and asking yourself, oh my God, what is going on here? I see these numbers. I just cannot believe these numbers. So it's the same to us, but then we can go from example to example, from market to market, from age of the building or special assessments. Now the expertise in buyers, thank God in our company, we have that expertise of working with buyers is more relevant because now you need to work and know exactly what is happening in every single showing. Basically, if you do your work your work before you go out, then you're gonna say, maybe I shouldn't even go to this place because it doesn't make any sense. And show the client, okay, this is the 3 things that you can see, and probably one of them you're gonna love. So we have to do the work before we actually say, I think you can consider this much units in any given area of the city.
So Ben, Jenny, going back to the, you said something very interesting. You said maybe these people aren't necessarily in it for investments; they're holding it for their families. They want to pass it along. That makes me wonder. You're a specialist on the buy side. You going back to the condo vulture realty days, coming out of the Great Recession. You are working specifically with buyers. You understand the buy side. You also do listings, but the buy side really tends to be where you accelerate. So we're going into a market where you're going to be very comfortable, but kind of walk me through it. If I'm a listing agent and I founded this Miami Condo Investing Club. We have a number of members, and we do meetups once a month. We had a meetup in Fort Lauderdale last week, and one of the members came, and we were discussing. She's got somewhere in the vicinity of 40 listings. She says her typical listing is it ranges the cost out of pocket to her, not to go and show the unit, not to do anything else. Take the calls, none of that. Her average cost is probably somewhere in the ballpark of about 2,500 to $3,000 per listing, just to take the pictures and do the Google AdWords and the Zillow and all that type of stuff. Does anybody want to be a listing agent if the properties are sitting on the market for, would you say, 150 days and the prices are too high and buyers aren't willing to pull the trigger, and these sellers feel as if, well, I got more money than God and I'm only going to sell if I get the price I want? Does it make sense to be a listing agent in this market right now, especially for condos?
Yeah, well, it depends again. And yes, yes.
You sound like
I
an
mean,
economist. On one
okay,
hand,
but this is true. In South Florida, it always depends. Always. But your job, I mean, to make your job easier, it's up to you really, because you can let go selling people, sellers. You can tell them this, listen, I mean, the market is staying in the market for 100 days. I need to go with aggressive price, or we won't be able to sell it. Period.
yeah.
So, or you need to give concessions, or you need to pay for maintenance fee for a year, or you have to come with a creative way to be able to move it. But this is true. I mean, the listing agents, even in my company, they're getting frustrated because obviously they have the seller, but what is going on? You're not doing your marketing. It's very frustrating for listing agents that are not able to get the seller to understand that the market is completely different than it was a year ago or 2 years ago.
So, Jen, it sounds like what you're saying is if listing agents are getting frustrated, sellers are probably also getting frustrated. Are we close to any kind of capitulation on behalf of sellers, especially as we get deep in the summer and the amount of activity tends to pull back? Remember, there aren't the big events going on every single weekend. The weather's hot. It's humid. Very soon, we're going to have hurricane warnings. Is there any moment, based on your experience in the industry, where things sort of turn and there's a capitulation moment? We're in Memorial Day right now, which up north is traditionally the symbolic beginning of summer.
Yeah.
4th of July, Independence Day will be the midway point, and then Labor Day is typically the symbolic end of summer. Have you seen anything over the course of your career where something changes based on date, based on hurricane warnings, based on anything that would-be buyers who are watching this should kind of consider?
I believe, especially in condominiums, when one guy capitulates, when one listing on any given building say, hey, I'm cutting off, I don't know, $100,000, then obviously by comparison and by the amount of listings, everybody's going to have to lower the price. You just need one to go down.
So I on that point, let me give you a scenario that was laid out to me at our meetup. Again, I do monthly meetups on the third Tuesday of every month as part of the Miami Condo Investing Club. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, maybe you're a realtor, you want to figure out what the hell's going on in the industry, we run data, we provide data, we share data, and once a month we do a monthly meeting that's virtual. But we also do these meetups so you can come in and sort of talk shop. So let me kind of give you the story, Jenny, and I want to get your take on it. So, I show up at the venue in Fort Lauderdale. Event starts at 5:30. I show up about 5:15. I'm hanging out. I got myself a beer, waiting for everybody to sort of come in. And a couple comes walking in, and the woman sees me and recognizes me. So I figure, okay, this is a member that I've never met before. So she comes over and we start talking. She goes, listen, Peter, your name is Peter, right? I said, yeah. Are you a club member? She said, no, but I recognize you from I've been doing this for a long time. So we start talking. She goes, my realtor, I have my condo in Fort Lauderdale. It's listed for $500,000. My realtor encouraged me to cut the price to $485,000. I said, okay, well, why? And this woman who's the owner, she says, well, the condo board president just acquired a unit a few floors below me, a little bit smaller square footage, paid $215,000. And my realtor says my price shouldn't be affected. Remember, I got it listed at 500. My realtor wants me thinking at 485. So I asked the woman, I said, what's the difference in square footage? She goes, well, it's whatever. So I said, let's call it your place is probably worth 250 now based on one deal. And she said, well, that can't be. And I said, well, why couldn't it be? She said, well, I spent $80,000 improving my kitchen. And I said, oh, you over improved your kitchen. Listen, the buyer downstream is not going to pay you. So Jen, my sort of question for you is, if somebody's in on a unit, and by the way, she's been on the market for north of 150 days, and she's all cash, so she doesn't have any debt on it. So Jenny, my question for you is, if a unit like that trades where you're listed for 500 and a smaller unit in the same building trades for $215,000, can this woman with the $500,000 condo, could she still assume, based on your experience, and every situation is different, but could she assume her place is still worth 500, or is it likely to get dragged down and have a two handle at the beginning of the price?
No, she's gonna be hurt. It's just a market. It's a market. You always say that, and this is true. I mean,
Yep.
condominiums are commodities.
Yep.
So it's gonna affect her, even if she put 80,000 in the kitchen or not. Obviously, she's lucky if somebody comes and they fall in love with the kitchen, because
Yeah,
remember,
let me ask you a question about the kitchen. Who spends 80 grand on a kitchen and then they're going out to eat?
well,
At the restaurant where I was.
that's not my problem. Really. But yeah, a lot of people do that. Don't even use it because it's too beautiful. But my point is, real estate, like another taking from this conversation is, real estate is very emotional. Some people fall in love with things that I cannot really see. I've been in properties that I thought it was good because the numbers, and they come and say, oh my God, this place is amazing, even if it's not to me. So it's a lot of emotion there too. So if she's lucky and she find a chef and the kitchen is a chef one, she might be lucky and get the return on that money. But most of the time, when I am showing properties to buyers and they are budget conscious, or they have a different taste of what they see, and they really want to renovate whatever they buy, I say you cannot go for over improve properties. And my advice to you, even if you buy a property, don't over improve it, because you're never gonna get that money back.
Yeah, which was sort of my point to the woman. I will tell you though, she had a look on her face when I sort of told her what I thought it was worth. And keep in mind, I told her anybody coming downstream is probably going to take the pricing on that $250,000 unit and reduce it even further. Why? Because everybody's afraid of catching a falling knife. The cliche goes, you take a knife, you drop it, and as it falls, you reach your hand out and you slice your hand until it hits the bottom. So, yeah, I don't think she had a very good dinner that night. I don't say that to criticize her. I just tell her, because it takes people time to come to the recognition as to what could come. Now, people say, wow, we got 1,000 people a day moving to Florida, and we're the gateway to Latin America, and we got great weather. And I can tell you in my 30 years, that has made a difference. When the markets have collapsed, they have just free fallen. And it's not just condos, it also spreads to houses. Because a lot of people in houses, they're making their money off the condos. They're selling tile. They are doing interior design. They are doing the legal services, or the lenders, or the this, or that. So it doesn't get isolated only to condos. It tends to spread throughout. Jenny, any stories you want to share about how the condo market impacts single family? Or, like I like to say, condos are vertical and houses are horizontal. So any story you want to share before we move on to our main subject, which is the pre-construction condo market?
It will affect, yes, I believe, because I mean, again, it depends. I think I'm gonna say depends so many times in the post.
But every economist, if you ask an economist something, they say I'm cautiously optimistic, and they say on one hand and on the other.
On the other hand, yes,
You're taking the economy.
in one hand, people go for houses because they need the space, and because they don't want to deal with HOAs or special assessments.
Yeah.
That was always the plan. But now the insurance industry became too expensive. The water became too expensive. And now when we compare, just in general, it's almost the same to maintain a house that maintaining a condo, cost
Oh,
wise.
contraire. We did a report a month ago, bankrate.com, a financial news source.
Okay.
They came out with a report and they ranked the top 50 markets with the biggest price discrepancy between owning a home and owning a condo. And according to Bankrate, it will cost you $21,000 more a year to live in a house than it will a rental. So the moral of the story is you're going to save $21,000 on average by renting in Miami rather than owning.
Well, this is true, but that's another issue for another podcast because
There
that's
we go.
something that we need to talk about.
So I get to annoy the people with the single family homes next. Is that what you're telling the audience?
Or talking about rental for life that owning something. Yes, it's probably gonna be. We're gonna have so much to talk about it every week because the market is too dynamic here. I'm not sure what is in other places, but South Florida is special because now when we go to the next one, maybe this is a perfect segue to go to the next conversation, this pre-construction.
Yep.
When I'm asking to people that selling pre-construction is where is the people coming from?
Okay,
In it,
hold on. You're getting to the kicker. We got to build this thing up. We're only at the halfway mark of our 1 hour show. Remember, we do these every Monday. If we can get the technology to work, we're going to do them at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Many of
Okay.
you are off on holiday today. If you are in the United States, if you are abroad, you probably have insomnia and you're not able to sleep. All that being said, 4 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to be doing these. These are going to be straight shots. Miami Condo Mondays. Jenny will be giving us her take, straight up take. I have a lot of confidence in her. I've worked with her for decades, and what she says you can pretty much count on. Although her and I don't agree on everything in terms of future outlook, but she's giving you straight talk, which is very difficult to find, I would argue, in the South Florida condo market. But you're giving away the details. So let me build up to the sort of situation. So,
Okay, go ahead.
So here we go with the build up situation. We got 28,250 condo associations in the state of Florida, of which we have 13,000 in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. So 28,250 statewide, 13,000 Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. When I say South Florida, I'm talking about the 3 counties. Everywhere from Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump spends his time, all the way down to effectively that border, that bridge, which takes you into the Florida Keys into Monroe County. So it's going to include a lot of stuff. So if you kind of look at what's going on in that overall market, what you're going to find is on the condo side, remember 28,250 per state of Florida, you got 1.2 million condos. South Florida, which is Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, just like I told you, 610,000. So half the units are pretty much situated in and around here. Now, many of these units were built a long time ago, and when they were built, they took up some great space, some great dirt. A lot of the new stuff that comes online now, it tends to be bigger, more expansive. It's not the high density type of product. And because of the Surfside collapse in June of 2021, there's been a lot of legislation that sort of kicked into place, trying to shore up these condos, making sure they're safe, making sure that we do not see another collapse. Although we just had a case 2 weeks ago where a building, which had gone through this life safety inspection, everything was identified, money was funded, the work was being done. And lo and behold, one of the major support pillars, it splintered at the bottom. And once that happened, the construction company called 911, fire rescue came out, police came out, and also a special response team with these poles, these steel poles to shore up around the pylon. And then they went floor by floor, wedging them in between balconies just to make sure this thing wasn't going to collapse. The way it all played out is the city of Clearwater is now signed off, and they said people can move in if they're willing. But if you did move in, what you had to know, first of all, around the pylon in question, nobody's able to move in. But the rest of the building, don't worry. it's not a big deal. But if you moved in, there were a couple rules. Rule number one is you can't do any construction in your unit. Rule number two, no repairs. Rule number three, you cannot accept a delivery greater than 75 pounds. And rule number four, you cannot move furniture that weighs 75 pounds or more. So, so the old ones are getting called into question. And because there's so many of them, like in Broward and Palm Beach County, about 80% of the market is going to be over 30 years or what we call vintage. Down here in Miami-Dade County, it's going to be about 50% of the market. And what this is doing is this is spurring some to say, you know what, let me just buy new. Assuming it doesn't sink, because remember, the University of Miami had a study talking about how 35 towers were sinking on the Barrier Island, Miami-Dade County. But assuming it doesn't sink, and assuming you don't want an old one with this risk that something could go bad, just like it did with Surfside, people are moving into new construction. And as they move into new construction, what are they finding, Jenny? We reported this week that you're seeing deposits which traditionally had been 50% of the purchase price. It had to be paid in steps or stages, increment along the way based on milestones, based on construction. And we saw that 50% cut down to 30. Now, keep in mind, the lead up to the Great Recession, condo developers were only asking for 20% deposits. And then what happened was when the product was delivered, the units were so overpriced versus what the real market was. Many buyers said, you know what, screw it, I'm out, I'm walking. Jen, what do you make? First of all, am I right? Am I wrong about the 30% versus 50? And what are your thoughts on it? And why do you think it's going on? We are arguing based on our internal research that sales aren't there and developers are trying to jumpstart sales. So what say you?
Yes, you're right.
I'm right.
They're trying. No, you're right. Finally. Finally.
Continue.
Well, they're trying to start sales. Some of the condos that are offering less than 50%, they already top off. So they already have a section of, I don't know how many units they have still to sell, but they advance in the construction. Some of them are offering like 2 years of maintenance, which is a lot of money. We know that. A lot of incentives.
By the way, on the maintenance, if I can interrupt to give people context, we're seeing maintenance on these new towers coming in, starting at $1.50 a foot into about $2 a square foot. The current going price in Greater Downtown Miami area, Dade County, it's about $1.20 a foot. It's a high rise and about $1.05 a foot if it's more of a low rise. And what does that mean? Well, if you walk in your bathroom right now, wherever you're living, I want you to look down and see how many steps you can take each way. Every step you can take based on your foot is basically going to be about $1.50 to $2 a foot in these new towers. So, go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Well, that's if it's your feet. If it's mine, it's two. No. But yes, the maintenance fees are $1.50 to $2. New construction, right now, some of them want to be Airbnb, so they're kind of like nice, but not super luxury. But some of them are these incredible, like out of this world amenities.
Yep.
And the service, and they have a Michelin chef, or they have car like Mercedes or Bentleys, and they're gonna have again elevators. So they for the cars. So they're having the okay. I need to find another similar word of depends for this podcast because
On one hand and on the other.
in one end and the one end, exactly.
Yeah,
So-
but Jen, can you tell me this though for the audience who might be listening? If you're an investor, your job is to make, or your goal is to make money. If you are buying to live, you want the creature comforts. So generally speaking, what we find is the more amenities you have, the higher the maintenance fee is in order to maintain it. My ideal scenario is a condo does not have a swimming pool. It has no gym. It doesn't have a concierge. You buzz in or you have a key, you get in there. There's very few amenities. And as a result of that, your maintenance fee would come down tremendously. Now, if you have a Michelin chef like you referred to, that person's got to get paid.
Yeah.
And all that is kind of where the maintenance fee gets run up. So, is it safe to say a luxury condo with all of these amenities is almost, it's better to have a friend who has one, kind of like a boat, rather than owning the boat yourself? And this way you get to partake whenever you want rather than actually have to pay for it day over day, week over week, month over month.
Yeah. In one hand, we have investors with your vision, right? Doesn't matter the views. We just want a space with a parking space. Hopefully,
Numbers.
that's another issue with all these new condos. On the other hand, you have the trophy property that you work all your life for. So 5 million, 6 million, 20 million. I don't know.
And
And
it's $2 a square foot for maintenance. You worked all your
yes,
life for this lifestyle. In a couple of years, you might have to go back to work to afford the $2 a month.
no. Some people have more money than God for whatever. And this I learned through my experience. I learned through my experience selling multi-million dollars units to someone where the maintenance is over $6,000 a month. Forget about the taxes and all that. And when I did the math, you were like, wow, it's really expensive. But then I learned that for them it's not. For them it's like for others like $500. So it really is in the one hand and the other hand in this market. Not in every city in the United States is like that. Miami became, and I don't want to sound like a cliche that 1,000 people coming, blah blah. But when yeah, yeah, but some of it is true. Miami is a city. I've been here for 33 years. I saw it growing in front of me, and it became a luxury city. It's a playground for the rich and famous. It is what it is. It is.
I okay,
What's your question then?
let's talk about pricing. I dropped the figure of maintenance fee $1.50 to $2 a square foot. Keeping in mind, once that tower comes online and the developer turns it over to the condo board, when they actually grab control and they run things, you typically find a 10 to 15% increase in maintenance fees because the developer has been subsidizing it to make it seem like a better deal than it actually is. Once the building gets turned over to the owners from the developer, those fees typically go up and or services get cut, but that's a sign. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're going to buy one of these condos, you're looking at 2% property tax. So if you drop $1 million on a condo, basically you got 2%. So you got 20 grand a year. You're dropping your property tax. Now there is something down here which is called the homestead. You're able to lock in a certain price point for being taxed, and it goes based on consumer price index. But that's another thing. So we got the 2% on the value. We got the burn on the maintenance fees. That's not including electricity. That's not including anything else. Now we're going to get into the pricing, John. Pre-construction condo pricing from what we discovered during our research integrated out to Miami, which, by the way, it's the Julia Tunnel, which is like 36th Street, south to the Rickenbacker Causeway, which is like 25th south. Then it'll be I-95 east to Biscayne Bay, which is, the water that separates Miami Beach from mainland Miami. So what we're told is $1,100 a square foot up to $2,000 a square foot. Some are even more, but this is kind of the overall.
Yeah.
So Jen, talk a little bit about the price. Have you seen that? Do you know that? And is this reasonable, or are these developers completely lost their minds?
Some of them lost their minds, especially smaller developers.
Yeah.
Money brings money, right? You have a brand, you have a super brand, people buying those things. But if you're middle of the road, then you are trying to assimilate the success of the brands. So what I noticed is that in one street that no one to mention, but I give you the story, but no, the author it's a street that is West Brickell. It was not even in Brickell, and a big brand came along, and then other a smaller developer is building using as a sales pitch. Hey, I am gonna be the neighbor for this brand new, amazing, wonderful tower. And so one real quick
If
thing
I
is,
can interrupt, so let me try to boil it down. Correct me if I'm wrong. So You got this mediocre part of greater downtown Miami, not near the water, far removed from the water. You somehow, some way convince some international brand to come in there and lend their name to some condo. And then because that mediocre site, which has been able to convince somebody to bring in an international brand and put the name on this would-be condo, another building across the street or in and around in the same mediocre area is now trying to price off of the original brand, which is in the mediocre with the international brand. So you're telling me both of them are playing off of each other, trying to bid up the pricing? Is that what you're saying?
Not as much as the same price, but definitely has a
So the
super.
selling point to be a
It's a sell-
mediocre.
it's a selling point with the market price for average in pre-construction. But now you have to look at the quality, what they do offer, what kind of construction it is. So that's when you need to know who is the developer, who is the people designing it, and those things become really important when you're trying to buy new product because it can be deceiving, if you will. It can be deceiving because you don't know if this is really worth your money.
Well, what I can tell the audience is if you've never bought pre-construction in South Florida or in Miami or maybe wherever you live, you could be overseas. Generally speaking, the first time developer is going to lose their ass. They're going to overimprove. They are going to miss deadlines. They're going to do all kinds of stuff. It'll take forever to get the delivered. They'll give you more than you anticipated on. It'll take a hell of a lot longer. The whole process will be arduous. Now, if you go to a veteran developer who's built before, who's got battle scars, who kind of knows how to get the project over the finish line, they're going to be able to deliver, but they're going to give you the minimum necessary in order to sort of accomplish their goal. So when you're out there looking for, understand if you take a shot in a first-time developer, you're probably going to have some bumps along the way. If you go to a veteran developer, they're probably going to be able to deliver everything, but you'll know exactly what the quality is because you can go visit one of their previous projects.
Right.
Great work, or if they do shitty work. So this is something to sort of keep in mind. First off, developer, guarantee will have problems. Second, developer who's got battle scars, they're the ones who are going to know how to get it done. So, a Brazilian developer was up here looking for some dirt. And, we had lunch over by Icon Brickell, which is these 3 buildings that were built right on the south bank of the Miami River. We're having lunch, and the Brazilian developer told me, he said, listen, when you build in Miami, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you leave with, because you get nickel and dime along the way. And a lot of people, that first one is a loss leader, and they make their money on the second transaction because the past one has been such a disaster. Have you heard, or Jen, you have any comments about my perspective?
Sure. First of all, we did have a huge development until 2006 to 2005.
Well, 2003 is when it began.
Yeah, in the beginning.
And
Yeah, in the beginning, 2005, 6, 7, 8. And then we have what we have now. Now we have historical presence of these developers or builders. So now we see really how they fare, how one building fared better than the other one, being one next to each other.
Now,
So
you're
that,
talking about separate developers. So there's a track record, a portfolio. So you know what the quality is per developer.
yeah, we didn't have that before.
Yeah.
So that's good for the new buyers that there is historical data that
Yeah.
shows what kind of builder it is. The other thing is that based on my experience, people who buys multi-million dollars units normally fare well, normally. Properties that are average, and when I'm saying average, I'm not saying average price, average quality or below a threshold of $1 million, they get hurt more financially. Why? Because there is more product like that.
I
So if you're in the middle of the meal, you don't know you're gonna get return on your money on pre-construction. Nobody can tell you, and nobody is able to promise you that.
So that's fascinating. So what you're saying is the more money you spend, it's kind of a hedge because there's not enough product in that sector or in that little niche, and therefore the prices might not get hit as hard because there's
Yes,
only so many people who can play that game.
exactly.
Interesting. So talking about pre-construction, and kind of what's going on out there in the market. We as part of our study, we took a look at it. There's about a 27% premium in Greater Downtown Miami on average asking price. If you look at $1,100 being the minimum based on our study,
Mhm.
and what the current asking price is overall, our pre-construction condos worth a 27% premium, given the fact that prices are still escalated from the pandemic buying boom of 21-22, when prices went up significantly, double, triple, some cases quadrupled.
Agreed. The fascination of this, what we do about condos or studying them or analyzing them based on experience, is that it's,
So, Jen, you were just talking a little about what you saw previously.
yeah, like even when we started this market, suddenly the market exploded in a way that we were like so surprised. And
Yep.
then condos start like a average condo would be $2 million and $3 million, and they were selling and transactions going back and forth. So it even surprised us. Imagine somebody that come from any place. I don't care if it's in the States or out of this country.
Yeah, but
And they,
remember though, anybody can buy. You don't have to have brains to be able to buy.
well, you need
It's
money.
sell it and make money. That's the real question.
That is true. This is true. So it's very unknown, and it's in the one hand and another hand situation for sure. But I mean, like I am daily talking to people on that trying to sell these super multi-million dollars condos, or buyers that want to get in the game, but they still holding off at least for the summer. So the summer I'll be traveling. I'll be, of course, still attending my business, and so we will have the reports because I will still work on that. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think this,
but I guess though you've been doing it so long, it tends to be habitual offenders with these pre-sale offices. Tends to be the same people who are recycled over and over and over, and they go from one pre-sale office for one project to another one, to
yeah,
another one, to another one.
yeah. I mean, time will say, but I'm very curious to see what happened with the first set of buildings that are going to be delivered that have been delivered in the last few months up to December, let's say, just to have a comparison on how they're fair, if they're closing or they're not closing, because I think it might be opportunity for some investors that they can take advantage of all this time that this person left 50% of their money for 4 to 5 years, and suddenly sometimes life changes. There are circumstances you have to leave the country, or you have a family problem. So there might be, besides the market going down, it would be a perfect storm for a buyer that is aggressive and I want to I can and it can see that it makes financially sense to get in one of these condos that are going to be delivered in the next few months.
So before I want to get a little bit more into pre-construction before we sort of wrap this up, this podcast again, we're going to do it every month from 4 to 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So, Jen, last go around during the boom, you had all these units that got put up. They got delivered. Once they got delivered, a lot of people said, "I want a contract at this price. It's worth this price. There's no way I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna walk on it." Then we saw the 50% deposit strategy introduced,
Yeah.
and the idea was no one's going to walk in 50% of their money. But now, from what we see, it's being lowered to 40. At what point is somebody who went through the Great Recession, who played in the Great Recession, who had success in the Great Recession, at what point does it return to where we were in the lead up during the Great Recession, where people might actually walk on the deposits and not close if these units are under contract way too higher price versus what they're going to ultimately be worth? Now, we haven't seen a pullback yet. If
No.
we do, will people step forward and will they close based on what you hear, or are they simply going to walk like they did, 10, 15 years ago?
Well, remember that in the last time around, the average price per unit was about $500,000. Now they're walking away from $1 million. That's a substantial difference,
Yeah.
huge difference. So I think they're gonna try to close, but sometimes they won't be able to, and they're gonna count their losses and move on. But the risk is much higher today than it was 10 years ago.
Now, I will say, we launched doing construction tours back in December. What was it? 2013, 2014
Yes.
or so. So like December of 2013, 14, we started doing tours. Jenny had a great idea. Why don't we rent a bus and we'll drive people around. We'll show them all the different stuff. And we did that, and it's progressed and proceeded. And, we were filling up buses, like the same type of bus you take from, let's say, to Miami, New York, if you will, 55 seaters with people showing up all the new construction. We then have evolved, and I like to walk, so I like to do walking. So we're bringing back our walking tours, and we'll probably be doing it very regularly going forward. But our first tour of the summer is coming up on 31st of May. It'll be at it's a Saturday. It'll be at 10 o'clock. It'll go to about 1 o'clock. So the reason I mentioned this is I did a trial test run. So I did the test run. I was walking all of it. And to see the difference in size of towers coming out of the Great Recession, towers built prior to the Great Recession, and towers that are today, I can tell you, unit count might not be greater, it might be smaller because the units are bigger, but the height is really starting to become something to see. And also, too, the infrastructure is pretty much unchanged, meaning you got a hell of a lot more units. You got the same shitty infrastructure that can't support what's there. So Jen, what are your takes on that? Are we becoming a Manhattan where pretty much you're going to have to walk, and maybe there's a necessity for a congestion toll in order to drive in, like places like Singapore and London? When you go into the city, if you want to drive, you got to pay a fee. Is Miami at that point, or is it getting close to that point simply because of the number of units going up and the infrastructure is so mediocre to piss poor?
Yeah, I agree. And most of the time, when I'm advising somebody about buying here, I say you need to think about not using a car. So try to go to places that you at least can take something to get you out of there. So the walking score became a premium.
Yeah, but
on
that
this
walking
market.
score, I walk a lot. I've done marathons walking them. I can tell you from my perspective, walkability, the way they rate it, they don't have anybody on the ground. They're doing it through a computer, because you go on the ground, you can't even be on the sidewalk. You got people blocking it, or you have this, you have that. But anyways, go on.
Yes, but it's a premium for being in a walkable place. As I see all these towers coming up, not just new condos, we have a lot of the shadow inventory of all these incredible amount of rental towers in greater downtown Miami. That's gonna be another material for the next podcast. But I think it's gonna happen. We are becoming Manhattan, especially if you look more into Brickell. You still it's just like you're landlocked or waterlocked. It depends on the time of the day. So yes, using the mover and things like that will help. But with the amount of people, I just cannot see that it's sustainable.
Okay, so on that, 2 points. One, you mentioned shadow inventory. Anybody who doesn't know what shadow inventory is, it's basically product that's not openly available, but if you know the right people, you can get your hands on it, if you will. Think about somebody trying to get into a club, and there's a guy standing out there with a red rope, and he lets certain people in and he doesn't let others in. When you think shadow inventory, think of that. It's certain product that's available, basically relationship oriented. And Jen, here's my final question talking about walkability. So if I'm coming in and I'm dropping $1,100 to $2,000 a foot, okay, on a condo, I'm paying $1.50 a square foot per month to $2 a square foot per month. I'm paying a 2% property tax based on the value of my condo. And I have to walk. Who in their right mind wants to burn that type of cash and then have to walk? because the traffic is so bad. I mean, is that something where we as a community, now it might be fine in the winter. Remember, there's 2 seasons. Winter, where it's nice, events, and the weather's perfect. And in summer, when it's pissing down rain, there's a hurricane warning, the traffic is bad, everything is puddling. So could you sell this super luxury product and yet require or force people to walk because the infrastructure is so bad?
To be honest, I don't know what the pitch is for selling this type of product. I think they sell you the lifestyle because it's not walkable, so you have more quiet and peace, and you probably can never leave your unit or your building. So they bring, like amenities enough for you to stay. It's kind of like in tourism, because that was my background before I was in real estate. It's almost like an all-inclusive sort of deal. Okay, I give you the restaurant, I give you towels in the pool, I give you kayaks to on the bay, and just to sell you that lifestyle. But they're gonna have to be asked for what is the problem with the traffic. Just try to go at 4 p.m. Try to go North in Biscayne Boulevard. It's just bumper to bumper. So I don't know how they achieving the sales in these places, but personally, in our office, we have people that bought into that, but they already resell. So like it was like 5 years ago, and they already resold the properties.
So these are simply flippers and traders.
Yes, they flip them. Mhm.
So we're coming up to our hour. Let me get in this last tidbit, and then we'll wind down this show. So traditionally, when you built large units, you would put them on the beach, on the Barrier Island, because people wanted to walk. They wanted to walk to the sand. They wanted to walk to the grocery store. And
Mhm.
traditionally on the mainland, it's about 5 mile causeway, which takes you from the Barrier Island. So you got the Atlantic Ocean to the east. You got the Barrier Island where Miami Beach is, Bell Harbor, Sunny Isles. Then you got a bay. Then you got a mainland. So
Yeah.
traditionally on Barrier Island, still big units. You didn't worry about traffic because you wanted to walk on the beach in and around there. And then when you went to downtown Miami, it was high density, a lot of people in there, and it was a different feel, but it was cheaper. Now it's almost like they're taking the beach product, they're building it on the mainland and expecting the beach prices. I don't see how it makes sense. Your final thoughts, Jen?
I think you're right. And finally, at the end of the podcast, I'm gonna tell you that we agreed on that. That is what is happening. Because I'm gonna tell you why, from my point of view. Because before the beach have all this cachet and all that, now we have so much stuff going on in the city. We have amazing restaurants and theater and the cultural life and the museums, that they are cashing on that. They are saying, okay, I cannot give you the sun, but I'm gonna give you an urban lifestyle. So yes, that's the pitch.
That is Jenny Huertas. She's the broker owner of CVR Realty. Check out her website, cvrrealty.com. She specializes in condos in Greater Downtown Miami, Miami Beach, the Barrier Island, pretty much Miami-Dade and Broward County. So go to her website, cvrrealty.com. She's primarily a buy-side broker. Her office does take on listings. And I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Check out our website, miamicondo.com. We're creating a community of people who are interested in the condominium market. We're giving them data. We're creating, we're offering them suggestions about preferred service providers, and we're giving them a venue to sort of trade information, share information, and understand this marketplace. And if you are interested in the condo market, you might want to come out and take one of our tours. We're going to be doing them every other Saturday throughout the summer. It's rain or shine. Dress accordingly. We're going to learn about 4 miles. We're going to give you a handout. We're going to give you more information than you probably can handle about a particular market, simply because, we're passionate about it.
Yes.
If you need any information on the tours, you can either go to miamicondo.club or go directly to Eventbrite, which is the address is miamicondoclub.eventbrite.com, miamicondoclub.eventbrite.com. And this is the Miami Condo Mondays. We're going to be doing it every Monday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.